I think what a lot of people are struggling with is this whole concept of allowing prisoners out early simply because there isn't enough room for them. It's nothing to do with good behaviour or some kind of new enlightened, softer sentencing. In effect, we're telling them, you're still as guilty as sin, but we're a bit crowded, so off you go.
Well, that is the reality of what's happening, and that's something which successive governments have had to grapple with. A very interesting feature just at the end of the last Tory administration was that Alex Chalk, who was the then Justice Minister, and he's spoken out about this, went to Rishi Sunak and said, we've got a massive prisons crisis. We do not have enough beds for the adult male population in terms of prisoners. And, of course, that's something that this Labour administration has inherited. We have failed to build enough prisons over decades in this country, and I'm afraid many of the cuts, particularly to the criminal justice system, are coming home to roost now. This is outrageous, and I feel awful, and I know how angry so many of the victims are, particularly victims whose loved ones have been murdered, rape victims, victims of sexual assault, who are going to see their perpetrators let out early. But the big question is, where are you going to put people?
So just to put some figures on it, Richard, sorry. So the Ministry of Justice figures for safety and decency, so safety for both the inmates and, of course, the officers who have to deal with it, is 81,681. We are currently at 86,098. So we are over what the Ministry of Justice believes is safe.
Yeah, and I think this is the question. So if you have the Prime Minister saying that he's going to review it, and I think most people would agree that it requires a review, which part of the system are we going to review right now? Because there is the question of capacity in prisons, as you've just outlined, and then there is also things that are happening before you get to prison, which is backlogs in the criminal justice system. So if you have people that are on remand, that is also taking up space because then they've not been set for trial. And then some people might argue in policy terms, for some people there's been an inflation in sentencing, so things are longer than they might have been previously. But for others, as we're hearing today, when a life sentence is supposed to mean life, actually that early release does make a mockery of justice. So it's fine for Andy Burnham to say, we are going to review this, but he is actually very limited in the actions that he can take. And also, does this actually mean that there's going to be more spending, capital spending, which is critical, on that prison infrastructure?
Are the options that limited? You see, I've heard so many people saying, why wouldn't a more effective leader, a more effective Prime Minister, be able to say to their cabinet, going back years now, we've got this problem coming down the road at us. I don't want to hear that a potential solution is letting prisoners out early, because you know what? The public won't wear it, and victims won't wear it. So that is not an option. You can put that off the table. So I want some imaginative thinking. How are we going to deal with this problem? I mean, I think anybody could come up with a few suggestions, such as building temporary prisons, the equivalent of prisoner of war camps, things which could operate at a level that would serve, you know, not particularly dangerous prisoners, but they could go there temporarily. A temporary solution. Anything...
Or those on remand.
Or those on remand. But anything to go for the option of letting, in many cases, dangerous criminals out earlier than they should be.
Absolutely. But this is something which governments have failed to deal with for not just years, decades. We have not been... It's really, and Salma makes a really important point. When you look, and I don't normally want to do this, but on this area, particularly criminal justice, you have to join up the dots in terms of looking at what's happened. Look at the cuts to police. Look at police buildings closing, so there's not even enough cells locally when someone is arrested to hold them. Look at the cuts to the prison service. Look at the cuts to the courts, where sometimes you get a situation where on the day when a prisoner is meant to go to court, there's a mess up with their transport and the whole thing gets delayed. Then you get to the prisons. Now, in terms of your thing about building prisons, absolutely, in an ideal world, Andy Burnham will say to Alex Norris, the new Justice Secretary, right, you go and build those prisons. We will, on another day, discuss where's the money for defence coming from, where's the money coming from for the health service, for carers,
OK,
all of these things. And just
Sorry.
one thing to finish. Whenever somebody says, right, let's do something temporary or build a prison, nobody wants a prison bill in their local area,
No,
right? And you get
that's true.
massive kickback from local people as well. So I hear your point, but it isn't just as easy as someone going, hey, let's just build a prison.
No, I don't think so. But let's just, so when this government came in and Keir Starmer was the Prime Minister, it was greeted with shock, the emergency measures to release, wasn't it? Even though they'd been there in place from the previous government. And they were people who had lesser crimes. So there was a sort of, it was sold as this is a one-off to free up the emergency. At that point, 2 years later, could something have been done? That's 2 years to do something, people might be thinking. 2 years to find a solution that meant that we weren't now in a position of having a law which meant from September, those who committed sexual offences, rape, killer crime, those really serious ones. And, you know, Andy Burnham's here and reacted to the horror of PC Andrew Harper's widow, which we're all reacting to. And this is a very... You know, this is going to lead to accusations that he doesn't want to be unpopular, he's going to do something now because this is such an inflammatory case. But the whole government could have seen this coming. We were always going to get someone, weren't we, that the whole nation was horrified
Well, there's
by.
been so many cases, Kate. This is not the first case, but I just put it back to you. You tell me, where would you like to take the money from to do this? Would you like to take it from care? Would you like to take it from welfare? Would you like to take it?
That's a government's responsibility to manage finances.
Sure, but
that's not for journalists or the public.
But there is a finite amount of money.
Or the relatives of people who've suffered greatly or been murdered by criminals who are being let out early.
I mean, that's the tough choice, isn't it? So is there not a... I mean, how much does it cost to build a temporary camp? Do we know? Do we understand that? Do we know what could have been done? I mean,
I think the closest that you would get to working out if there is a temporary sort of holding solution is to go back. I mean, strangely, to go back to COVID and thinking about how quickly you could set up hospitals and bays and things like that, and that's probably the nearest example. I think the reality is we have to look at actually how many new prisons are coming on stream and how many of the old Victorian estate of prisons are actually going to be upgraded and what's already been allocated for that. And it sounds very technical, but those are the bits that I would like to understand before anything else, because I'd like to see how much this is going to get better or it's going to get worse.
We've already had comments from this, on this. Mr Baker says, you know, when will the government reopen some of the prisons closed by David Cameron? Of course, a lot of those are hotels and all sorts of things now, aren't they?
That estate.
But he said HM Camp Hill is still available. Why not look into doing that?
So I think that is a really good point, to look at what is still potentially on stream. But I think you also have to understand that the estates themselves are incredibly complex. And one of the reasons that a lot of the old estate was sold was because they were in places that weren't helpful particularly. They were really run down. And in fact, the security was a problem. And that's why they took the estate off. But I would just say that there are solutions to this. Some of them is about management. Some of them is about getting things on stream. Some of it is about what can you do in terms of temporary and what can you do in the justice system before it gets to prison. But all of that requires a big systems thinking, and I'm glad that the Prime Minister is going to look at it, but the solution is not going to be easy. And it might take, the truth is, it might take another 2 years before we see...
So these two guys who've sparked this whole discussion, and we don't know for certain that they're going to be let out early, but it's certainly been considered. It may well be that they are released before Christmas, and there's nothing to be done about it.
Well, to Salma's point, I went to Belmarsh Prison recently. My God, you do not want to be skimping on security and things in a prison like that. So this idea of a temporary prison, I get it. But you speak to prison officers who are having, you know, they take their life in their hands going to work every day. Look at the number. You speak to the prison officers' unions about the attacks. That we know there's been some horrendous attacks.
Yes, I was talking about low-risk prisoners.
But sure, but you still have a duty of care to the prison officers and to the public as well, because people have gone to prison for a reason. And if safety was compromised, people are like, "Are you mad? Like, why have you just thrown up, you know, sort of porta cabins?"
Well, except that the public safety has been compromised by these people being released early.
Sure, it's not, Richard. It is far from perfect. None of us on this panel or any of us in this studio think this is good. The solution to this is investing more money to build more prisons, to put more money into the criminal justice. If you are if you're a victim of rape now, the chances of your case being heard, you are looking at 2029, 2030. That is not acceptable. That is just not acceptable.
But then hold on. Doesn't that mean that actually, I mean, you're saying on one hand, we need to put loads more money into the system to build more prisons. That is not without its problems. First and foremost, we have very limited cash and limited resources. And secondly, it's not just the point that you just made about things coming to trial. That is not a prison problem. That is a justice system problem.
There is a justice problem.
And at the same time, I mean, I don't know what the new Justice Secretary is going to do, but we have had a policy where it's about abolishing jury trials, for example.
Well, that's going to be reversed now.
So I think
Andy Burnham said that.
I think that's important. But then what comes as a consequence of that? Because that has a direct impact on what's going to happen to the prison population.
I agree with you. You could go further. I would actually like to see as well more police officers to stop crime happening in the first place. I would like to see more thinking done. What can we do to prevent crime? Because you go into prisons and you're speaking to young lads who are 20, 21. This is their third time in prison. You're like, what's happening with this revolving door of... And a lot of people going to prison are persistent offenders. And what is being done to try and stop
Just
them?
before we move on, because
later in the programme, we'll be talking to Aileen O'Connor. She's the chair of Thames Valley Police Federation, and she is spitting rivets about this, as you can understand. We'll also be talking to the government's Minister of the Day and raising many of these questions, and hearing from you as well. So do get in touch.
Yeah, do keep those coming in. Before you move on, though, to look at the politics of this, you know, this could be seen as one of Andy Burnham's first big tests, isn't it? Can he deliver on this or not? Can he respond to this or not? And other than just words, he can't do anything.
Well, it was Keir Starmer's first test. If you look back to when Keir Starmer took over...
I know, but we've got a new Prime Minister who we understand and we're told doesn't like to be unpopular. If he doesn't do something about this, he is now coming absolutely at the coalface.
But the problem is not going to just disappear because there's a new Prime Minister. We seem to have a new Prime Minister
I'm not suggesting it is.
So he will have the same... And look, Shabana Mahmood was the Justice... Alex Chalk was the Justice Secretary, outgoing Justice Secretary. He very nobly... He's a great guy, Alex Chalk, really knows his stuff. He has gone on the record and said, we were close to literally running out of a cell to put male prisoners in. We were on the brink of the... So this problem is not going away. The other thing we haven't talked about is the probation service. That's another very important part of stopping people reoffending as well.
OK, we're going to discuss this more as we go through the show, as I said. But let's change the record now. You know, we're about the only country in the world that charges for drop-off at airports. The RAC say that none of the 10 busiest airports in the European Union charge. Neither do major international hubs like Dubai, Shanghai, Istanbul, most airports in America. And yet now more than 3/4 of UK airports are raising or introducing drop-off fees. £10 is a typical charge. 16 out of 20 airports that the RAC have analysed are increasing. Not even cutting or holding steady, but increasing.
And £10 is for like 10 minutes.
Absolutely. The kiss and fly
it's not even long.
The kiss and fly charges. And there's nothing, apparently, we can do about it.
This is such a racket. It's such a
It is a racket. That's exactly the right word.
I just don't understand why you... Like, clearly, if you're going to drop somebody off, there's clearly a process that you go through, which is, this car gets in, you get out, you go into the airport, you drive off. Why would you introduce a charge that essentially is about the functioning of an airport for a customer? Like, what is it? Like, the thing is about airports or anything like that, where you are trapped because there's this huge infrastructure that you are dependent on to get your flight, to go on your holiday or, you know, whatever it might be. But I can't believe that they don't have any thought for the fact that these people are customers. We are customers of the airport.
That's why.
Exactly. I think we should boycott buying anything from airports as a response to this charge.
But that's half the fun, isn't it? I mean, you know, airport travel's bad enough as it is.
Well, Richard, I know you enjoy your pint at 8 a.m. at Gatwick Airport before you fly out for your holiday, but I think that, you know, if we're supposed to be the customer and, you know, we're given all the shopping to do and everything else when we get there, I think in response to these charges, everyone should bring their own sandwiches for the flight. I mean, I know that's not allowed, but the equivalent of something that you could do that holds something back from the airport.
What they say, the airports, is that they have a responsibility to the local community in terms of pollution and noise. I can
What does
see
that
your
mean?
faces. Well, if people are loitering with engines running, maybe, I don't know. I don't work for the airport. And also that, you know, that they have to make things pay. But a lot of people are doing this because parking your car there is so expensive
Well,
if you're
if
going
Andy
away.
Burnham wants a nice popular policy to think about for the next manifesto, I suggest looking... Because this is a really good example, as you say, of the racket and just looking at people as cash cows, because the costs are exorbitant for a tiny amount of money. I've had this when my mum and dad or someone's tried to pick me up from the airport, and it is so expensive. It is ridiculous. And the other thing is, I think the other car parking charge that does my head in is hospitals. You know, yes, we understand things, but there should be some sort of cap, or there should be, you know, we don't mind paying a bit, right? We get that, that's an argument. But 10 quid for literally 2 minutes.
Well, that's because they're all privatised, aren't they? They're all separate businesses that work here. But I mean, I also wonder about if we were talking about this, weren't we? If you're, you know, very often you're taking your parents or elderly relatives to do it to help them out because. And, you know, if they just take an extra minute, suddenly you've got 50 quid or 60 quid.
But I think this is
there's provision for disabled.
This is the thing that makes people feel that Rip Off Britain is a real thing, right? People are fair. They would understand that maybe if you said, look, if you're coming to pick, you tap your card, it's going to be like a couple of quid or whatever. It'd be like, that is totally reasonable, even £5 or whatever. But as you talk, you can end up getting a bill for about 60 quid just for going to do
and in terms of the justification that's been put forward, we have to manage air pollution. I'm sorry, I hear the authentic whiff of management speak there, and I could use a different word, but I won't. I mean, how does taking a series of tenors off people as they drive through for 30 seconds, how does that in any way, shape or form affect the level of air pollution in the area? It's nonsense.
I mean, that is entirely the point. So if you drive in with, say, an electric car, can you forego the charge, for example?
Nope.
So I think this does have to be tested a little bit. I think that's absolutely right.
So if you're stopping to have to pay, doesn't that mean it's going to take longer as well?
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. Let us know what you think. What have you been stung for? We'd love to know, you know, what your annoyance has been when you've discovered this, because they're going up.
That's the point.
That's the point.
They're going up, or airports that don't have them are introducing them. So it's a problem that's getting worse, not better. We'll be talking later in the programme about how we spend our national wealth. Huge debate, obviously, that we need to spend more on defence. But there's a growing debate, apparently, within government saying, well, maybe we should be putting the money that we should be spending on defence to fix the roads. It's as simple as that. Heidi Alexander's saying she's considering that. What do we think about that? I mean, is it time to put defence absolutely at the front of the queue?
Well, it loops back to the conversation we've just been having now about justice. There are so many competing priorities in government. You know, we could do another discussion about care. You know, I was doing a show on Friday night. We had a big discussion about social care. We all want to see more money going into social care. Government is about making the priorities. Now, on defence, I think this is really serious. I do not think we are in a hypothetical scenario where we are talking about the possibility of conflict in about 50, 60 years. No. I think this is happening now. I think we're already seeing things. So I think defence, I know some people don't like this, but I think we have got to tool up on our defence pretty soon. Do
you agree?
Without question. I think if you don't have defence, everything else... In the world that we are in today, everything else flows from it. And I think it's not just a question of, OK, there's a Ukraine war that's on our doorstep. It is actually the fact that we are under threat and attack all the time. So, for example, the undersea cables that are huge communication channels, they are constantly under threat. Cyber warfare, the kind of online attacks that you see, the shape of war is changing. So it's not just about what we might have seen in our references from history. So that defence spending is critical to our national infrastructure. And I think we need to do a better job of making sure that people understand that those things are aligned and that their priorities are aligned. It's not an either or, it's the security from which everything flows.
The other thing I'd add to that, though, it's not an and, it's not a but, it does need to be the money that is given to defence, and I think much more money needs to go to defence. I think they want to try to get to sort of 3.5% by a certain point. We also have to make sure that money is well spent. Procurement in the Ministry of Defence has not always been great. I've spoken to many senior military people and they have said they have got to get better at how they spend that money as well.
And do we think that the fact that our new Chancellor just a few months ago was the Defence Secretary and he stood down because we weren't spending enough, do you think that actually guarantees that because if he's in charge of the purse strings, that he will allocate more money to defence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let's see, because when jobs change, I think sometimes perspectives change as well. I mean, I think
But
John
he's a man
Healey...
of honour, he resigned.
Yes, I actually do think John Healey's a man of honour. I've met him a few times and I think he has a lot of integrity.
Yeah.
But actually, when you're sat in the Chancellor's seat, there might be some other considerations when you're not
But
just
I
thinking
think
about defence.
given that that's what he is known for now, I think that is a very, very clear signal that Andy Burnham... Also, I think having Wes Streeting in defence is interesting as well, because I think he is very political and he will fight very, very hard for that money as well.
Couldn't agree more. Should we have a quick look at a prince who's just turned into a teenager? These lovely, lovely pictures, I think, shot in Cornwall, weren't they? Of
On
Prince
holiday.
George. On holiday.
Oh.
He's a good-looking lad, isn't he?
Yeah, he looks like a lovely boy as well. I mean, obviously, it's like a very video of him sort of frolicking away on the beach, but I think there'd be lots of parents sat at home thinking, gosh, what a lovely, well-behaved teenage boy that's going to turn out to be.
Do you not feel a tiny bit sorry for him, given
I was just about to say that. I think these pictures are lovely, but there is part of me which is like...
the destiny that's hanging over his head?
Absolutely, and the fact that you're in this goldfish bowl from, this young age of every bit of him is going to be scrutinised. And of course, the palace have to manage that very carefully. But yeah, his destiny is he's not a private individual.
I was thinking that watching the news last night when those pictures broke. I was thinking, you poor lot, you poor
boy. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Lad.
Yeah, but at the same time, a lot of people that are watching that are actually wishing him, incredibly well. They want him to. We have a great pride in it. And so I think, yes, we can talk about the negativity because of what we've seen before, but actually lots of people are they're going to be very happy to see these pictures because they feel that they can relate and they're sharing a part of that national story.
I wonder what the royal family condition it will be in, its status will be when he becomes king.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a great question because... And, what kind of society will we have as well? It's a really, really good question.
Very quickly, we haven't got much time. Weight loss jabs have always caused controversy, but for a lot of people, they have only had positive effects, haven't they? We're talking later on about access to them in the show, because a lot of people with eating disorders have been able to get access when maybe they shouldn't. But there's also new information from a new survey to say that they found a connection between hair loss and taking the jabs, both men and women. But 50,000 users of the jabs found a significant link to hair loss. Is this one of those things where, as the use becomes more, we start to see some potential downsides?
I think the background to that is that this report is not saying that the hair loss is caused by the weight loss drug, which is a GLP-1. It said that the hair loss has been caused by a lack of nutrients because people are eating so much less and they're not eating the right mix of nutrients. So I think we can't yet say if it's just because of something in the drug or if it's how people are then eating.
Right.
Yeah. Just to be clear, when we were discussing the prisons before, we were talking about killers being released. It's not murderers. It's not those convicted of murderers. For instance, the two involved are manslaughter.
Are in prison for manslaughter, not murder.
So
the other one is not up
but
for
not actually murder.
Because there was a third person. He is still going to be in prison because he is deemed as the
not
murderer.
affected by
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was deemed as being more of a danger to the public.
And he was the guy that drove.
And he was the guy driving.
OK.
Just to make that clear for people. All right,
Thank you both. We'll see you a bit later on in the programme.